And we are live. What's going on? YouTube live. I just got a message saying that Facebook crashed and did not go live. So, what's going on YouTube live? It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Wednesday. As many of you know from the first row, I'm on hiatus because I only do 2 months on, 1 month off. But this is a very, very, very special event today. Today is the inaugural episode of the Men's Circle. What is the Men's Circle? So, the Men's Circle is a space that I am creating for men by men because men need a space, and I'm willing to create that space. This is very, this is a prototype. I'm not sure what it's going to overall be at the end of the day, but I don't wait until I know what things are going to be to get started. I just jump in and then I'll figure out how to swim back to the surface eventually. But for those of you who are tuning in live, this is going to be a 2-hour segment where I have a panel of men. The panel will change and fluctuate throughout this thing, but a panel of men. We're going to have some conversations around very sometimes sensitive topics, sometimes topics that we're very passionate about, other times just topics that we just need to kind of get out there and get into the ether. Tonight's topic is going to be on the topic of men need love too. In a lot of the adventures when I was creating this that I've come across on social media, on things that people send me as far as content to review, I was coming across a lot of things that were saying about how as we as men need respect, we need, to be respected above all things, we need to be respected. And it was negating the fact that we needed to be loved. And so what I did is I called some of my brothers, as you could see, and said, hey, let's get together and have a conversation about this. And so tonight's conversation is going to be very honest, very transparent, and very unscripted. I'm going to encourage you, if you're watching live, get involved in the live chat, engage. And I actually saved 2 slots. So if you're feeling bold enough when we do put up the link, if you're feeling bold enough, jump on the stage with us for about 5 minutes and speak your piece. So with that all being said, I would like to introduce the panel for this evening. I'm going to go from top to right and bottom down. So first I have my brother, Key Bryant. Key is, man, I don't even know. We've known each other since I was like 14, 15, or 16. But we've known each other for quite some time. He's one of my closest friends by far. And there's so much I could say about this brother. He's passionate. He's very thought-provoking. And I want you to go ahead and finish introducing yourself, Key.
Thank you, brother. I mean, look, we've known each other since, like you said, can't remember. See, I thought we was like little, but it was probably like more like medium little, like teenagers. But no, yeah, Key Bryant, been rocking with Billy for a very long time, especially with this journey on the first row. Also, dabble into, I won't say dabble, but real estate is everything, all in everything I do. So, like to add advice in any areas I can in life. Billy and I have some great conversations all the time, and glad that he's able to put up a platform that we're able to keep it real as men and a lot of issues that are out there. And, hey, however personal it can get, I probably might get the most personal out of everyone here. So looking forward to it.
All right, up next I have Sean, my brother Sean. And you're gonna notice I refer to all these men as my brothers because, well, Rico, you'll be my brother eventually. Rico's the only person I don't know personally, but everybody else and Rico now is my brother. So my brother Sean, he joins us from Sacramento, California as well. That's my hometown. I currently reside in Utah. But my brother Sean, I met him on an unscheduled appointment, divine appointment. That's what I would say. I met Sean literally in a passing of a restaurant. I met Sean, and it was just something that immediately clicked, and it felt like I knew him for years. The moment I passed him, like the moment we interacted, and we actually reconnected when he was moving to the States. And the rest, honestly, is history because now we just got done confirming it's been 10 years since I've met you. The rest is history, and I'll let Sean go ahead and introduce himself.
Yeah, it feels like we've known each other forever, like you described. I've been part of the mastermind that Billy set up, which is where I met Key. So we're kind of familiar with this space of having like real deep conversations real quick. I'm super passionate about this specific topic, especially when we talk about love and that type of thing that generally speaking men, from my experience, have a struggle with. So I'm excited to jump into this space. From a work standpoint, I'm an HR executive and executive coach. So I go deep with folks all the time. So I'm excited to jump in, especially with all of these brothers that are on this call right now. So yeah, ready to go and excited to be part of this crew.
Nice, let's do it. And you know, that's you bringing up classics. I think the mastermind was like 2014. That's almost almost 9 years ago. That's wild. Next we have Rico. You might see his name on the screen as Jeremiah, but I'm going to keep referring to him as Rico. Rico is an unknown to me, but he was recommended to join this panel by my brother Glenn. And being that Glenn made the recommendation for him to be on here, that's more than enough credibility for me for Rico to join this conversation. So Rico, if you could please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, but I greatly appreciate the opportunity, and it's good to, get to see everybody, get to meet everyone. So my name is Jeremiah, but they call me Rico. And I was given this opportunity by Glenn. Glenn is a brother of mine. We're not only partners in business, but also just brothers in life. And having some of the same our mentality and the moral compass and those things that they aligned. This was presented, and I was like, geez, this is real conversations. This is stuff that people actually need to hear about. And it's not any of the so-called toxic masculinity of internet. These are the type of things that men actually deal with, and we need healing and counseling in. So this is phenomenal. Myself, I am CEO of my own company. It's a financial agency. It's like a one-stop shop for everything we do, from retirement savings to stocks, all kinds of stuff. So the boring stuff people say, right? But usually we like to help people make money, so making money is a good thing. But man, my main focus, honestly, with this whole entire experience is just to dive in and meet with brothers that are like-minded, right? Because we're two adjoined, right? And so we're all here, and looks like we all have the same mentality. We're looking to provide value and give that value, and then just converse amongst each other and learn. So I appreciate you guys allowing me to be here.
I told you, Rico, with Fidelity, I didn't have to give, I didn't have to coach him, tell him nothing. You'll fit right in. Next on the screen I have is my brother Tim. Tim and I go back to first grade elementary school. Super Nintendo, regular Nintendo Entertainment System, probably the Atari system at some point. I don't even remember what system we started gaming with, but we still game together today. But this is one of my brothers. He's somebody who's a very compassionate father. He's somebody who loves his family. He's somebody in my perspective of him truly exemplifies what manhood is and what husbandhood is as a husband to his family, not just his wife, but to his family. Like, man, he's a dope brother. He's somebody I can lean on when I need counsel of my own. He's somebody who can see things. He's somebody who can see things that sometimes we miss. And he's actually somebody who, when you look at the circle of his friends, he's a person in the circle who people highly respect his opinion. Tim, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Tim Rushing. I don't even know how to follow that, honestly. Thank you, Billy. It's funny you say how long we've known each other, because when I was linking into this thing, I was trying to think of if I could remember a time before I knew you, and I can't. Maybe I'm getting old, but this is a great conversation that is to be had. It's something I've been focusing on really hard on the last 7 to 8 years of my life, being more reflective, asking what I can do, and asking how I could be heard. So I think this is going to be a really, really strong, good conversation. I look forward to working with each of you and learning how to find that sweet spot, because, well, I'll share when we get to the topic what my thoughts are on it, but it's not unobtainable. We can get to it.
Absolutely. And then next I have, man, just being on this call, I'm realizing how long I actually know people. Next, I have John. John and I went to junior high all the way through present day together. Like even his wife, I know his wife because they are high school sweethearts. Like I've known John for so long, and John has always been one of those people who has just kind of been around. He was always very well spoken, very intelligent, but at the same time, he was very quiet. And so when I reached out to John, like, hey, yo, you want to be on this panel? One of the things that I love that you said was like the easy answer would be no. The easy answer would just be like, no, I don't want to be on it. I don't want to do it. But I love where John's at, especially being like observing John through social media and things. It feels like he's in this space where he's like, I'm just going to grow. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm just going to grow. I'm just going to push myself. And so I'm just really happy that you chose to participate. I feel like you're going to bring a ton of insight to this conversation, and you're going to bring a different perspective as well to this conversation, because I feel like sometimes the people who are silent have the deepest thoughts and they don't typically get the platform to share them on. So I'm going to be looking forward to coming to you for some of the answers. But other than that, go ahead and share introduce yourself, John.
Thank you so much, Billy. It's really nice to connect back with you. It's interesting. It's I've always thought myself as a student of life. So I'm very observing. Like when someone speak, I listen. There's like no talking back. Trying to give advice because I always feel like I don't know it well enough to try to give advice. So we'll see how this goes. I still very uncertain of what's going to happen or what I would say, but I understand. You always got to be respectful. You got to be positive. I'm always in a place to try to bring as much love as I can, but even with that, it's a huge struggle too because I'm human. I got my own emotions too. So, but thank you.
See already that human element that we're gonna come back to it. But that human element is important. And then last but certainly not least, Mr. L3 Perspective, one half of L3 Perspective himself, my brother Glenn. I have actually, Glenn and I, when I was thinking about how I'm going to create this particular show concept, Glenn and I actually had a meeting, and that meeting in and of itself felt like a men's circle, even though it was only two people. It was a men mind. But in that conversation, it was like, sometimes you don't know the nurture that you need until you're actually in the process of receiving it. And Glenn and I have actually known of each other for almost 2 decades, like literally almost 2 decades. But for some reason, our circles never quite overlapped, probably because he was serving in the forces and I was running around being a knucklehead. That could have been the reason. But I always believe in the timing in which things happen and the timing in which things occur. And so maybe at that point in our lives, though we knew of each other, I had very great admiration for who he was as an individual. Now is the time for us to be connected. And so I will let you go ahead and further introduce yourself, and then we're going to jump straight in.
Billy, I appreciate it, man. First and foremost, look forward to conversing with each and every one of you guys. Billy, appreciate you creating this platform to bring brothers together and just be able to share their life experience and learn from each other as well. I'm just grateful to be at the table, and I really look forward to it. But yeah, like you mentioned, I retired from the Air Force after 21 years about a year ago, jumped into the financial industry 3 years ago. And so I get the opportunity to serve people in a different uniform now every day. And so I wake up every morning. Thankfully, I'm locked in with another like-minded individual, Rico, where we get to just kind of serve. And so I plan on doing the same thing. I have one goal coming into this thing is just to be open-minded and provide any value that I can based off of the topic. And but Billy, I appreciate the love, and I look forward to the conversation.
All right. Now it's time to get to the work. Nice meeting y'all, but it's time to get to the work. As always, no matter what show I'm doing, I always like to get a perspective of what a topic means to people. This topic, I really kind of hold dear to this topic on the fact that, and I don't know why it says me need love. Let me fix that. See, this is the little technical things. When you take a 2-month break, all of a sudden you forget to hit the right word. There we go.
Me need love too.
Me need love too, though. But I do. But this topic is men need love too. But for me, I always like to dive into what the topic means to you, because I think that's where we begin to get our definitions of really what love is. And for me, when I started thinking about men need love too, I really started feeling about the times in my life, or started thinking about the times in my life where I felt unloved, and the impact that that had on everything, not just on me, on work, on relationships, on depression, on finances, on diet, on exercise, on everything. Those times in my life when I felt like I was unloved, I thought how I felt unworthy, how I felt like I was just trash. And it was like, why am I really here? What's the purpose of me being here if I'm going to have to exist in this unloved state? And so when I started thinking about men need love too, I started thinking about how that feeling that I had in those moments of feeling unloved was something that society, somewhere along the path of defining manhood, accepted and said, it's all right, you don't feel unloved. It's all right. Here's a straw, suck it up. It's all right that you can't emote the emotions that you feel. It's all right that you can't put yourself in a space where you need love. I'm very specific on the words. Not men want love too. No, men need love. It is a nutrient, no different than oxygen as far as air to breathe, no different than cholesterols, fats, and proteins. We need love. And so for me, this topic really hits home, and I honestly, like, this topic resonates with me so deeply. I wouldn't be surprised if I got emotional during this conversation, but that's a space of vulnerability that I'm willing to go into because of the importance of the topic for me. So when it comes to men need love too, it is really about it being the nutrient that we need. It's not optional. It's not up for negotiation. It is something that we must have in our lives. So that's what this topic means for me. Key, what do you got?
I'm gonna keep it real. I think it needs to change from men need love to men need unconditional love too. And where I feel that, I mean, I think there was a bit that Chris Rock had. He talks about how men are only loved on conditions, right? The condition to provide, the condition of doing this right, doing that right. Women and children, unconditionally love. It's in a societal sense, right? You look at children automatically love, women automatically love, men got to do this for the woman, right? Type of thing. And it's just something that I've kind of felt like, man, why can't we just get that benefit of doubt? Like, just off top, as a man. So that's kind of where I am with it. It's like, yeah, love me, but in the same sense, even if I'm not doing everything, I still need that love.
Unconditional love. I wrote that down immediately. So we're definitely going to explore unconditional. What do the conditions look like? Sean, it looks like Tim dropped out. So you're next and Tim is back. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I love where Key was going with this, right? In terms of the unconditional piece. When I look at this particular topic, like, also keeping it real, I feel animals get more love than men do. You know what I mean? Like, when you think of how people take care of their dogs and their pets and that type of stuff, like, this whole concept of just that word love alone with males, for me, has always been this thing that it's something that we have to seek out, and we have to explain, and we have to try and see how we rationalize it, and do we even deserve it, right? All of that type of stuff, when at its core, like, it's foundational, right? It drives everything that we do, who we are, how we show up. If we have kids, that element of our ability to be able to tap into love drives how we raise our kids and our whole families. So for me, it's not something to be added to the plate. This topic is the plate. So that's my thing. You're on mute there, Billy.
Oh, I just unmuted and then remuted. My bad. Glenn, it looks like you're up next. What does this topic mean to you?
Yeah, appreciate it. So I like this topic because this is one that's not talked about enough, especially in many communities. And like for me, it going back to what kind of Key was saying, it's almost like a missing link, right? And like a lot of times, a lot of men have to walk around with a mask, pretending to be something. And when it comes to us needing love, that missing link is the love piece, right? In a lot of communities, you know, we're walking around to be hard, to be protector, but we don't know what love actually means because we don't have that example in the household, or we don't have that example in the community, because of so many people, even within our inner circle or around us, are walking around with that mask. And so it's powerful. It's really powerful, and needed. And so once we continue to have these conversations on many platforms, now that missing link becomes linked, and I think that will be a big change in the world, and that's us moving in the right direction. And I think this is kind of a start to it.
Yeah, that platform is important. Rico, it looks like you're up next. What do you got?
So, I mean, obviously, adding on to what all of you gentlemen have stated already, but I mean, this whole topic puts me in a sense of I'm thinking about a book, Cry Like a Man, Jason Wilson, phenomenal book. If you haven't read it, it's a good book to read, and it's kind of on this topic, and it's just teaching you about, this whole factor, the love factor. And I think in a lot of cases, what ends up happening is us as men, we feel expendable, and anything that's expendable, right, has a has a start date and a due date, right? It has a shelf life, right? And whereas the love, as you stated, Key was talking about, and it's funny because that's what I was going to mention about, what Chris Rock stated. We're the only people that don't get unconditional love, right? We have to do certain amount of things, and when you're expendable, you have that shelf life. When your shelf life is up, it's time to get a new version of it. And I think a lot of times that drives us in the decisions that we make, whether it's the persona that we put on in the streets, whether it's the love that we reflect onto our children, onto our wives, whether it's the decisions that we make on a constant day-to-day basis as being leaders of industry or leaders in our community. All of this all stems from love and or the lack thereof, right? And so if you feel expendable, that makes their heart colder, right? And that makes you do things that you probably wouldn't want to do. Even when you do it, you sit there and kind of think like, why did I just do that, right? But well, it doesn't matter anyway. Nobody cares about me anyway. So, it's whatever. And so I feel like when we remove ourselves from that place of feeling expendable, and we get to the place to where we're needed, and we become known or felt as a necessity to being not only just the nucleus of the family, being successful in the nucleus of the family, but also, just in the space of being, right, as a human being, that you need me as a man, and I'm loved and I'm appreciated. Then that's when we start to move into being more productive, and we see society change. I think a lot of the problems that we have right now is based on this topic, and especially in our communities, in minority communities, you have a very big lack of love. So that's what this topic means to me. Extremely deep and extremely volatile, but very much needed to be communicated and to be expanded upon.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. John, welcome to the stage, brother.
Yeah, definitely agree with everyone. For me, I mean, just something to add. I would say I heard the word foundation earlier, and a big part where I'm at right now is I would say a person, and especially a man, we really need to be able to love ourselves, because I know we're the protector, the provider. There will come a day when when shit hits the fan, and we're I mean, I know Billy and I, we grew up at Tim, we grew up in the same area, like that's like the sewer. We grew up in the sewer, and when we climb our mountain and reach our peak or at a peak, one day we'll come crashing down. You got to be able to love yourself, because the values that other holds you to, that put you on a pedestal, people are out there to break you down, and you gotta be able to love yourself, and that's easier said than done, because I know every time when I look myself in the mirror, I could tell you so many things what's wrong with me, and it's tough. It's really tough. You know, you gotta be able to love yourself.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to that because that self-love component, whew, I tell you, sometimes we be like they hitting you with baseball bats and you the only one there hitting yourself. So
Right.
absolutely, we gotta get back to that. Tim, last but not least, what do you got to add? What does this topic mean to you?
It means a lot, man. I've been wrapping my mind around this since I seen the itinerary. Um, First thing I think of is I think we all know there's a severe lack of that, and I think part of it goes to of it's conditionally and over time what society expects of men. They expect us to function on as little as possible. If you want, women are the rose, men are the cactus. We get a little bit of water, we're supposed to survive the harsh conditions. Um, but I've been thinking about how we get to this point and how do we get past this point? Because the tricky thing, and all of you could probably relate to this, is it's easier for the opposite sex to voice their need for love because they don't fear the loss of attraction from us for them voicing it. But if we voice our concern about love too hard, we're less attractive. We're deemed not strong men. So it's a way of you got to learn how to ask things in a more measured way. So it's this is a fun is probably not the ideal word, but it is very interesting of what we're going to go over today.
Ooh, yeah, that man, I ain't even gonna say nothing to that because I 100% agree with you. That's all I can say is I 100% agree with you. Like they expect not, and they isn't men or women, it's people expect
Yeah.
that you can't be vocal about your love because what do they call it? You're thirsty now. Oh, you want love? You thirsty. And now I'm out because I got to go and find somebody who doesn't feel like they need to be loved because that sounds like a lot of work. I actually had this conversation with my wife once where we were talking about how to communicate with each other, and she was like, she had wanted some form of communication from me, and I was in my mind, I'm like, God, that's a lot of work. I'm gonna have to actually work on that to communicate at that level. And so then she's like, well, what does this communication look like to you? And I was like, well, this is how I would have gone through that. And I mean, it wasn't short. It was like, you would say this, and then you would have to do this, and then you would have to do this, and you'd do this, and then you do this. And that would be effective communication with me. And she was like, that's a lot of work. I said, yeah, right? Like, it is to love. And sometimes people expect this unconditional love from you, even though they haven't put themselves in a position to be unconditionally loved by you. They want this unconditional love that requires work that they themselves would not be willing to do to love you the same. And so there is something later on I want to talk about the reciprocal nature of love that kind of like what you were saying, Tim, that cactus and rose concept. Like, yo, like I get it. I'm a cactus, but I'm gonna need a little more water than 2 drops a year. Like I'm gonna need a little bit more. So with that, let's jump into some of the myths about men and love. Like one of my favorite myths is that we don't need it and that we value respect over it. That is my favorite myth because yes, I absolutely 110% value respect, and disrespect probably even still at this age can get you knocked out by me. Like real talk can get you knocked out. But at the same time, I would rather my wife, if I had to choose, like no middle gray area, if I had to choose one or the other, would I rather my wife love me or my wife respect me? I'm picking love every time because the actions of love that align with love are going to supersede the actions that might align with respect. I can respect you by not simply saying anything. I can respect you by cheating on you in private and not putting our business out there so that you're not embarrassed. But I can't love you and do those things. And so every single time I hear men want respect more than they want love, they might want respect more from other men over love, but they don't when it comes to partnership or when it comes to family, when it comes to deeper relationships, they don't want respect over love any day of the week. I'm only speaking for me. Maybe you guys feel differently, but that's how I feel. So that's one of the myths that I want to knock out the park right now. We don't value respect over love. And anybody telling you that they do, maybe they've just had toxic forms of love and don't realize the capacity of what true, authentic, uncontaminated love actually looks and feels like. Maybe they don't understand that. Anybody else got a myth? Anybody can jump in.
I thought somebody unmuted. I mean, I'd like to just stay on that one, honestly. You know, and maybe it's seasonal, right? Maybe that's something that as your maturity level grows, you grow into that aspect, right? It kind of puts me in the mind frame, that thought process. I was talking about this myth. It makes me think about you expecting a rapper to rap about the same thing at 45 that he did at 20, you know, and so, you know, because people, why does Jay-Z talk about art and right? It's because people evolved and they changed. And so as a man, I think maybe when you're younger, maybe, and you're out there running wild and doing other things, maybe you want respect, you need love then. But maybe I think we're talking about want, you probably want more respect then. Maybe that gets you a little bit more clout or however, whatever. But as you start to grow and mature, you look to settle down, have a family, things like that. I think it's completely honest. And it's so true. You really, you want love, right? And I think a lot of us, we didn't get that growing up. And it's, you know, I'm speaking for myself, but family wise didn't come from maybe the best family or anything like that. So I didn't really know what it was. And so for me to express that, or for me, I wanted it, but for me to express it myself was a little bit more difficult. So I had to start doing personal research and personal development, and you know, 5 love languages and things like that, to start to understand what it was and the different aspects of it, right? And so I think that is a myth. I think that, especially if we're talking about mature and developed men, and men that are you know, confident in their masculinity, and they're at a place where the clout doesn't mean anything anymore, right? I think that for sure, I think that's a myth for real. I think we definitely want love, because as you said, the fruit of love, you know, it builds to everything else. Because if she loves me truly, right, then the respect comes hand in hand, right? Because she's gonna love me if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and she loves me, then she ends up right. And hopefully, she ends up respecting you, and those things go aligned. So yeah, that's my thought on that.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too. I think the myth that came up for me that I think is really connected to this idea of respect that we're talking about is that love was always soft, right? And men need to be hard, men need to be strong, and love didn't fall into that category. Whereas respect always seemed to have this like a different weight to it, right? Even when you use the word respect, people kind of like they puff out their chests, right? It's like you better respect me, or I deserve respect, right? But love was always this thing where it's like, oh, could you give a brother some love? Like, I need love, right? So there was this like, I find society had put like love in this sort of soft category and really attributed to women, children, and animals. Again, I'm back on that thread, right? Versus men having to be this in this place of respect, right? And that's where I feel like a lot of this stuff got twisted up, right? Because from a love standpoint, for me personally, I always knew I needed love. Whether I could articulate it or felt safe to bring it up or talk about it, it's a thing that's inside that I could never even put real words to. You just know that you want it and you need it. And then you gauge that against society that's showing something very different, right? Showing more of a respect thing, more of a, you got to hold it together. You got to bring in the money, or right, all of those things that are attributed to males that had nothing to do with love. Like it was total polar opposites. And I had struggled for a long time to bridge that gap between what I was hearing and sort of seeing and what I was feeling deeply, right? And needing to reconcile that. And I mean, I could go on and on, so I'm going to let some other folks jump in. But that self-love piece really, like, that's a big needle to thread around this topic.
I'm
Yeah.
glad.
I was just gonna say I want to kind of piggyback off because since we're talking about the love thing, I'll go even further. The myth of men don't need to be shown love. Men don't need to. You don't need to let your man know that he's desired, that you desire him. Those are pretty big myths too. I see Keith shrugging his shoulder. He already know. Like back when I was first dating, me and my wife been together for 15 years. When we were in our initial dating, we probably were together like 8 months or something. Randomly, she sent like these flowers to my office with like a message in a bottle. She sent that to me. And that's all I need to know about where we are as a society. Because that same thing happens to a woman. Everybody's like, ooh, girl, he loves you. I got that in office. I got made fun of for that. They were like, who's sending? Look, oh, tell your boyfriend I said, what's up? You know what I mean? It was wild. But not to say that they have to go to that level too. But that was one of the things that really caught my eye. And I knew, okay, this might be a for real relationship, because she opened up and unlocked a lot of things that I didn't know that I needed, because I was conditioned to compartmentalize, function off as little as possible. Don't show emotion because that makes you weak. Don't be too tough because that makes you unapproachable. We walk a tightrope as men. Let's kind of call it as it is. It's not easy, and that's the myth that I would say we definitely need to work on dispelling, is not only the love, but how do we show it? Men need to be shown love too. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to whoever was next.
Hey, I'm glad that we parked on this conversation because number one is needed, and I appreciate the transparency. I remember being younger and navigating through those relationships. One of the things that I thought that I needed was the respect versus the love. My perspective on that was so different. And the reason why I say I'm glad we parked on is because, there may be someone watching who may be a teenager or a young man that may have never had to navigate through life, and they feel like the respect outweighs the love. Like that's what's needed in order for them to grow as a man. And it wasn't until, and I didn't mention this in the interview. Actually, I met Billy through my wife and her circle, and that's how I was introduced to him. And if it wasn't for my wife and actually learning how to love, not just her and not just the family, but even myself, like being able to understand that while I thought what I needed in a relationship was respect, it was more so was that missing link, and it was the love. And I think that a lot of men across the world, again, that's that missing link that needs to be filled. That's that missing void that needs to be filled. And I think when you're open and honest with yourself enough, and you're seeking and understanding what you need as an individual, and understanding what respect is, and understanding what the true meaning of love is, and you really kind of connect those two, you understand that it's not so much as a man that I need just the respect, because the love connects to respect. And so I just wanted to, like I said, acknowledge you guys for parking on this conversation, because again, this is something that many men, ones that have experienced life and one that are entering the first phase of experience in life, need to hear. Yeah, because it's true. So.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I'm hearing, it feels like it's the synergy of where we're at on this, is a lot of us were given the example of what partnership looks like. And as a partner, like, just think of a business thing. There's not necessarily emotion involved in business unless you're doing something that is something you're building and you're building it from the ground up. When I go to my job, there's not a whole lot of emotion. I like the people that I work with, but I'm not expecting them to love me. And so a lot of us in the relationships, I know for me growing up with my parents being together, a lot of times what was displayed in my household was partnership. Like my parents would get into fights, like physical fights. They get into this physical fight, and then it'd be like, all right, but we got bills to pay. And so your perspective of what love should be and what love would look like begins to skew. And it actually, I'm not even going to say skew, it begins to sour on, well, shoot, if that's love, I don't know if I want that. Respect me, keep your hands off me. And so then you find yourself in this relationship with somebody who doesn't love you, but they don't hit you, and you're not having to physically fight with them. And so you stick and you stay, and you give the next generation another example of what partnership looks like, but not what love looks like. And that's where we begin to get into that soft love, hard love. Oh, don't be too needy, but just a little bit. Be teasing each other because somebody's displaying love to us. That's actually unlocking something that is an area really, for me, I'm going to say for me, love comes down to a trust component, an area that we're willing to open up and unlock and be vulnerable with. Now we're getting teased about it. So what do? Oh, we got to shut the door back. We can't, we can't do that. She feeling me. She sent me some flowers, she feeling me. Y'all know how I got the flowers. Like all of a sudden, that's the way we're at, because it's embarrassing to say that I received that love and it felt good. Like, it's embarrassing. And that is wild to me, that we have gone so far past a balancing point that now it's like, to be loved as a man is embarrassing. I'm telling you now, I swung back the other way. I'm like, yo, love me. I would tell my wife, love me, please. Love me, because I'm going to love you. And I'm going to try to do the things that it takes to love you. And also, I'm going to do the things that it takes to love me as well. So I love that self-love component. I love that soft love, hard love dynamic. I think that all those are very, very important. I do want to bring something in from the live chat really quick. Jay Renard, Leather. This is one of my cousins by blood. You know how we all have our cousins and cousins. This is actually one of my cousins. But he says, it took a long time to realize that the only unconditional love I'll get comes from me. I love myself even when I know I have things to improve upon. You could really just put a period right there, but you did say some more, so I want to put that. Once I learned to love myself, I had less anxiety, and I learned contentment and internal validation. Love. And that's literally why, for me, self-love is so important, because when you're chasing external love before you get the self-love, oh, that's going to let you down every time. I'm going to tell you, I've had some times where I've chased. In fact, I had a time where I tricked myself into chasing external love that I didn't even want. And because of that, was suicidal for like months, because I was like, I didn't get the love. They're rejecting me. What's going on? And I didn't even want the love. And I remember sitting with some young men, and they were like, what's one piece of advice you would give me? I said, my one piece of advice I would give you is always tell yourself the truth. Always tell yourself the truth, because deep down in your soul, you know the truth. Regardless if you say it or not, you know the truth. And I found, because I chose to go against the truth that, hey, this relationship really isn't, this is a partnership. This isn't love. This is a partnership. This is toxic love. Because I chose to say, but, we got to try to make things work, and we got to go through something so that our relationship has credibility. Because I chose that lie, knowing that it was a lie, I ended up in a space where, because I didn't have enough self-love, I almost took myself out. And so the importance of love for me, like, it's a priority. Like, yo, I tell people all the time, I love me. So if you don't like me, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I don't feel that way about me. Is what it is.
I got one more myth.
Yo.
Since we're talking about it. Unconditional love is a myth. Nobody has it. Your kids don't have unconditional love. Your wife, you, nobody. Anybody you feel you unconditionally love could do things to you that will make you not love them, in my opinion. That might be controversial, but it is. That's how I feel about it. And I think when you feel like that, and you come into a place where love, I think having conditional love can be healthy, because that means we're earning each other every day. We're earning each other. We're not resting in our laurels and allowing people to go unloved, or unacknowledged, undesired, things like that, because we expect them. Because I didn't hit you, I didn't cheat on you, so be around. Why would you do this to me? So, in my opinion, unconditional love is actually a myth. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
I'll let somebody else shoot first. I got a thought about unconditional love, but go ahead.
And I don't know, man, the unconditional love piece for me, and I feel you on this. This is where I end up going spiritual, right? Because God for me is the only entity that could provide true unconditional love. You know what I mean? No human being has the ability to do that, in my opinion. So a lot of where I finally got over that hurdle around love and around that self-love piece was through spirituality, right? Through God and through the acknowledgement that there is somebody that does love me unconditionally, right? And it's nobody here in the earthly realm. And so once that set in, then I was actually able to really focus on loving myself, which then translated to how I could engage with others or how I could accept love, or you could not love me and it's okay because there is one Heavenly Father for me that I know in my bones and in my cells that does love me unconditionally. So
I think that when people say unconditional love, right, they just mean less conditions. So maybe it's like, let's be honest. I mean, if it was like math, right? If we're talking math, then there's an absolute, right? There's like absolute zero. It's just zero. So like God, right? That spiritual, whatever you universe, whatever you call them. I mean, for me, it's God as well. Then that's absolute, right? So that would be the absolute. That's the standard. There's absolute, and then there's degrees somewhere along there. So when we say it, we just really mean, because especially in American language, we're very figurative, right? We don't really mean, well, we're not literal. We're just saying there's very few conditions on this love that I'm giving you, right? It's like, hey, don't go out here have a kid on me with some other guy. Um, don't rob me, take all my money, don't have my kids out here, right? It's like two or three things, and other than that, I mean, you probably cuss me out, you talk to me probably, or whatever. I got minimal conditions, right? Versus maybe for her, your conditions, there's a long list. You got to meet, A through Z, and maybe you just got A through C for her. So, and that's what I think it is. It's really just, it's less conditions. That's really what people mean. So when we say unconditional, we're saying I love my child. I mean, a mother's love for a child is darn near, it's pretty close to what you're gonna get absolute zero. Because it's funny, I'm looking at I wasn't recently, but probably a month or so ago, the Jeffrey Dahmer stuff, and everybody knows what he did, and his mom still cried for him. So it's like that mother's love is probably as close as you're gonna get. But maybe there's something that certain people can do to their mom don't even love them no more. But that's pretty hard. So I just say, I won't say it's a maybe yes, technically, if we're really just sticking to the letter of it, like, yeah, it probably there's only one entity that's going to give you unconditional. But what we really mean is that it's just less conditions. So when we say unconditional, it's like, do you got one or two conditions? Right. And so if you got those one or two conditions, I could probably meet those. But if you got 26 conditions, man, it's not unconditional. You got a whole bunch of conditions. So I do respect that. And I'm, on this, the whole love, right, is this going, I want to ask all the brothers on the panel, is it a cultural thing? And the reason I'm saying that is because, and maybe, that's too deep to dive into that. But the reason I'm asking that is because I had friends, of a different race or whatever. And what I saw in their household, right, they could tell their brother, they could tell their mom, I'm not feeling well. Hey, or their friends even, right? Like they could tell their friends, hey, man, you hurt my feelings. Hey, man, that hurt, man. I thought you're supposed to be my brother. You weren't supposed to treat me that way, right? Versus maybe in our communities, you don't say that, right? Because you get a certain type of, flack or something. So I'm not saying it is, but I'm just wondering if maybe some of it is cultural, some of it, and it could be of the American culture versus others that are in other countries as well. But maybe I just thought about that.
So you're just to clarify, you're talking about kind of that to go to Sean's point where he says love is more so perceived as weakness. To say something like, hey, yo, that hurt my feelings, or I felt unloved about, like, you teasing me about whatever, I felt unloved. Now all of a sudden we're a crybaby, and it's not. No, you're right. What I did was an act of unlove. It's you're the problem. You're sensitive. You just like your mama. See, this is why they want you around your mama. Like, you get all those things, but you don't get the thought and response. You don't get the, well, what did I say and how could that have come off? And I could see how you would feel like I don't love you. I actually struggle with that with my son. I have a son who lives here with me in Utah, and we're going through a lot of behavioral issues with him right now. And for me, I know up here that he's my son. I love him. Like, regardless of what I'm going through with him, he's my son and I love him. And sometimes it's just reminding myself, even in the lecture or even in the discipline, even in the punishment or the consequence, to be like, hey, yo, I'm doing this because I love you. If I didn't love you, let me give you what that example would look like. It would look like me doing nothing and letting you spiral out of control. That's what that would look like. And so being able to have the understanding of, though love is conveyed differently along different levels, being able to have that understanding, and even whether he hears me or not, pouring that into him and saying, hey, this is what love also looks like. It doesn't always look like, hey, here's a PlayStation, you're failing 4 classes and here's a PlayStation 5. It doesn't always look like that. It looks like, hey, you're failing 4 classes. My job as your father is to get you back on track because I love you and I want success for you. That's what that looks like. But if we're not communicating that to our children, it just looks like punishment. And I don't think it's a cultural thing, and I don't think it's an American thing. What I think it is a generational thing, because I didn't get a lot of that with my father, and I didn't get a lot of conversations with my father. I got a lot of lectures with my father. Like, I remember one time he was like, yo, if you ever have one of those, I'm going to let you feel the way you feel. If you ever have a problem with how I'm speaking to you, just let me know. And so I took that literally, and he was yelling at me one day about my room being dirty. And I was like, yo, like, I don't really like your attitude right now. I wasn't disrespectful. I wasn't like, yo, I didn't flex. I just, hey, I don't like your attitude right now. And that led to an 1.5-hour lecture about all the things my father didn't like about me. Well, I don't like, and I don't like, and I don't like, and I don't like. So do you think I'm really going to open up to you about, hey, I feel like I'm unloved? No, hell with that. I'm cool. I don't got another 1.5 hours to figure out what you don't feel like I don't love you about. So I'm good. So I don't think it's necessarily cultural. I think it is generational. And then the pivot for us is our abilities as the elders, soon to be elders, our ability to say, how are we going to do it differently? How are we going to just move away from me just beating you down into submission to do what I want you to do, to actually opening up dialogue and conversation and getting you to try to think about the decisions you're making. So that's my take. Sorry I took so long.
I'll just throw in, I think this question really, and this topic really brings up kind of a broader gap in society right now, which is we lack empathy as a society severely. We don't think about what the other person's going through. We talk a lot about feelings and we want to be accepting of other people's feelings, but the same people that scream, accept me, they don't want to accept you for what you think or feel. It's really funny how that works. But like the example what I feel makes you a great father is and this is what I do as a father, is I take those moments I remember as a kid and I remember them. And I try to be better than that was for me. And every time I have where there's discipline time or something with my kids, I kind of debrief them a little bit. Sounds really official, but hey, look, you understand why this is happening, right? And I check for understanding with them, make sure they get it, because I don't do this for fun. You think I get enjoyment out of watching you be punished? I don't. which is better than what I got, which is just smack, stop crying. But it's those things, remembering what it was like to be that kid and being what you wish you would have got is something I strive for.
Glenn, were you about to say something? I didn't know if you were on mute.
No, I was just saying I love it. I love it. I love it.
Hey, Billy.
Yep.
I just want to add on to that cultural, like if it was a cultural thing, I mean, at least I'm Asian American, I'm Hmong American, I would say like it would actually be worse, because for me, it's like we talk about soft love and hard love. You never hear the word love, but then like I understood my dad loved me, but he never said that he loved me until he passed, right before he passed away. But like it's almost like there's that myth that like at least in my culture that love don't exist, like especially like with the man and a woman, husband and wife, that the love doesn't exist. And then you add on to like other layers, like talk about like like arranged marriage. It's almost like it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work living and we're at this place in time, like in Western society. It's almost like if you're looking for love, like why date an Asian man, Asian American man? That's not what you're gonna get. You'll get like you'll be provided if you're lucky enough, but you're not gonna get that love. So, and like for me, like as a son, you're looking up to your father, like you see a lot of like domestic abuse, and for me, what I learned was like, okay, I'm not gonna do that. So I'm not gonna do that. But even with that, I didn't really know what love was. Like I saw it on TV. Like, I was just thinking about like, oh, what were like some of the dads that like I try to like model, and then in that it goes back to like sitcoms, like Family Matters, like Full House, like so like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Those are like who I model. But then even with that, that's TV. Like it's like like someone wrote that. It may not even be real. So it's tough. Like it's really tough to you hear the word love, but and then also we say unconditional love, but it's kind of like, man, what is that? What is that? It's so it's I feel loved by my wife, but it's kind of like going back to like like how do you love yourself, like before you can even give love to others. So
yeah, we I don't remember if Sean and Key remember this when we were doing the mastermind, but I remember one time we were having a conversation and David was talking about a communication mountain. He was saying, we tend to pour information from a silo perspective. I have all this knowledge in my brain and I'm going to dump it all in your silo, and then you're going to have all the knowledge that I have. But he said communication typically works better when it's a mountain. It's you're building on this side of the mountain, and you work up to a point, and at each level of the mountain, you're building understanding. And that understanding component is so critical, especially when it comes to love. The 5 love languages, Rico, you had mentioned, that 5 love languages is how I'm able to see my wife's thing is quality time. She wants to be around her man, and that lets her know she's loved. That's not my thing. I just need to know you're in the house and I'm good. Like we're in the house together. We're spending time in my mind. but my thing is not, people always think for men, oh, it's acts of services. All men, they want to have sex. All men, you just got to feed them. All men, I care. Look, I know how to cook for myself. I can go and get a date with anybody that I want to get a date with. Like that stuff is not important to me, but appreciation is very important to me. To feel appreciated is how I feel loved. When you talk about being, John, you talk about being a provider, like, hey, you get lucky, you got somebody who's going to provide for you. But it sucks being a provider and not feeling like, dang, I'm making all these provisions for the house. I mean, if somebody came in the door, kicked it in right now, I'd take the first bullet and I put hands on them to the best of my ability, and not to not feel appreciated for that. It's like, well, dang, does anybody in this joint love me? Because if not, I mean, we could start drawing straws on who takes the first intruder. Like, so for me, when it comes to like seeing where things are modeled, and Tim put in here said, who loved Uncle Phil? Uncle Phil didn't get a lot of love in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He was constantly teaching the lessons and pouring love and giving compassion to Will, but he wasn't the person who people said, hey, you had a bad day in investments. Hey, you had a bad day as a boss. Hey, you're living in this Beverly Hills community where I remember they had one episode where there was like a racism episode, and it was like, yo, like, no. So imagine if that's one episode, what that really would be like if it wasn't scripted and you're living in this posh white neighborhood. All of a sudden, do you might think Uncle Phil might need some love? Because I tell my wife all the time, hey, my priority is my peace. I have to be in a space of peace because I know me. If I'm coming home and home is crazy and chaotic, and I go to work and work is crazy and chaotic, and I'm in my car in traffic and traffic is crazy and chaotic, if I can't find peace, then I'm going to disappear. I'm going to find other places to be where I can be alone, and that peace is going to be prevalent. So it's understanding that there's so many different complexities to love. There's a communication that takes place and an understanding that has to be reached between two parties who are trying to love each other. And I'll even go deeper. There's an understanding that has to take place within us in what our self-love looks like to us, because a lot of times in my reflection period, in my meditation period, I have found that what I thought I was doing to self-love myself, I wasn't self-loving myself. I was simply stabilizing myself, like Tim said, taking the bare minimum of what I need to survive to continue to move forward. And I would move forward in a stabilized position, but I wouldn't move forward in a healed, rectified position that would actually allow me to self-love myself. So that's what I wanted to bring to that.
What's crazy about that is you think about people that date, right? Think about when you were dating. If you're single on this meeting, think about what you're doing when you're dating now. Like I know Key's married. John, Billy said you're married to a high school sweetheart. I think I had classes with probably your wife. If I think is your wife Julie? I didn't mean to go off topic.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I remember Julie because I remember like, dang, they've been together for a long time.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is how many of us know that love languages? How many of us really know ourselves? In a weird way, man, and I'm big on accountability. And I think as men, we need to be accountable because the circumstances that we find ourselves in is our fault as a collective. We've allowed this to go on. We put our head down, bite down and bear it without seeking that stuff, getting to know what we need and getting to a place where I think it's okay to demand it in that. Like, I need this. And are you able to provide this? And if you're not, then guess what? It ain't going to work. It ain't going to work in the long run. You're just wasting your time. You're going to be a 60-year-old single person instead of a 40-year-old. And so we kind of do this stuff to ourselves. And I think that's what we really need to get better at as men in general, is voicing what we need and being comfortable with that.
Facts. I'll even add on to that, Tim, because I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. I think a lot of us men subscribe to exactly what we're talking about the whole, men need love too. A lot of us just, even when we're married, we go into it and we're like, nah, I'm not going to ask for much. All I want is, to rest, eat, and have sex. That's it. That's all I want. But you need more than that. Sometimes you need more than just those basic things, right? And that's not what defines love. And if we don't know what our true love language is, if we don't know how to love ourselves, then how are we going to be able to tell someone else how I want to be loved, right? And I had a client that's going through a divorce right now, and what we're sitting there trying to go over the house, trying to sell the home and stuff, but he literally didn't want to talk about that. He went into the whole dynamics about the marriage and what was going on. And he's like, marriage isn't about love. Like he kept saying it over and over. It's not about love. It's about duty. It's about commitment. Right. And I had to stop him for a second. I said, well, don't you think love is actions? I've always thought love was a verb. I never thought of it as, this foo-foo emotional feeling. No, it's actions. So when you love someone, there's actions that come behind it. I think you were talking about that earlier, Billy. And so I kind of break that down for him and said, you were looking for love and you were looking for that love to have certain type of actions. And that actions was in commitment, or those actions were in duty, right? Those actions were in every time she came home, she gave you peace. It's so funny you said that, Billy, because that's literally what he was talking about. Like, I just need to come home and have peace so I can strategize and think and do things for this family. Like, he had to be able to break down what being loved felt like. And I think it was probably something he never expressed to his wife, that in order for me to feel love, these are the things that I need. But instead probably came off like, why don't you just give me some peace? Right? Instead of just sitting there and just actually saying, hey, I want to feel loved by you. I love you, and these are the actions I do to show you how I love you. And hopefully that rings home for you, that you see that when I do this, that I love you. And these are the actions I need from you so that I feel loved. And I think as long as Ben continued to subscribe to the societal norms that, hey, we need very little, right? And women need a lot more. I mean, we do that even when it comes to dating sometimes. Tim hit that too. It was like, men are always the one taking them out to dinner, the flowers, all the romantic gestures, all of that, right? And we subscribe to that consistently all the time. But how often has a man ever said, yeah, you're going to take me out for dinner? You're going to buy dinner for me? Like, you can do that. There's not a problem with it. You can reciprocate it, right? But if you're not breaking those norms and you just keep following along with it, we're going to keep seeing the same stuff.
Sean, can you ask that question you put in the chat?
Yeah, I think it a lot of it comes down to, especially when we talk about taking accountability. For me, the fundamental thing came down to, am I enough just the way I am? Because the lack of enoughness, from my perspective, seems to be the root of a lot of challenges around love, right? What love means, how to accept love, etc. Because if I don't feel like I'm enough, I'm going to continue doing, right? Less being, more doing. I'm going to constantly be trying to achieve, trying to gain the love of my spouse, or gain the love of a child or a boss or whatever it is. So once, speaking personally, once I could establish that I am enough just the way that I am, then all of a sudden, like my grandmother used to say, she's like, when you change, Sean, then all the things and people around you will start changing. And that's what it was for me, right? It's the lack of enoughness drives a whole lot of different behaviors that leads us to, like, sometimes even think we want something that we actually don't want, or interpret what we think love means or would look like. And it really stems from, if I don't feel like I'm enough, I'm constantly grabbing at all types of stuff, right? To fill me up or to make me feel like I'm worthy. So that's what I meant by that comment.
No, a great ad. I think that's a great ad. Really quick, I want to bring in from the chat. Brother Bruce Gatewood is with us tonight. It says external love and validation and the need for it can make us do crazy things. Once the primary source of love comes from within, we start looking at the outside sources differently. Gosh, man, I didn't even read that before you said what you said, Sean. But that's literally what you just said. Like, those outside sources, you're grasping at strings. It's almost like if you were drowning and you didn't know how to swim. You're going to grab at the seaweed. You're going to grab at fishes swimming by. You're going to try to grab at anything that you can grab to try to stay afloat and get back to the surface. But the reality is if you simply know how to swim, you can bring yourself back to the surface. And then when they throw the donut to you, you're like, oh, let me grab this donut and I can get back to the ship. But when you are panicked and you don't know and you're struggling to try to figure it out, again, you're just grabbing at everything. So you're grabbing at pornography, you're grabbing at prostitutes, you're grabbing at drugs, you're grabbing at money, you're grabbing at careers, you're grabbing at all these things that they tell you will draw love to you. You're grabbing at all those things and you're wondering why you're still not getting what you seek. So, no, great. I want to move on to the next question that I have for the group. What has been your reality with love and or experience with love as a man? Tim, I love your story already as far as Kamala sending you flowers and a message, like something thoughtful with love. Because I feel like for us as men, often what we operate on is residual love. It's no different than the relationships that like I said, I have long-term relationships with people. And there's things that you will do for people that you've known for a very long time that you wouldn't typically do for somebody that you just met. But what happens sometimes, because of the length of relationships that I have, there'll be a long gap in the relationship and then it'll pick back up. And sometimes people, when they have that long gap, their memory of me is prior to the gap, pre-gap. And then they try to do something post-gap. And I'm like, hey, yo, I'm not that person anymore. So whereas old Billy would have done that, Billy today isn't doing that. And so when you think about these love experiences that you've had as men, or the experiences that you've had with love as men, I feel like sometimes that residual or that memory of love, when we say we love somebody unconditionally, I'm not with her anymore, but I still love her. No, you love the memory of that person, but the person today, if you still loved them in the sense of love, you would still be with that person, especially in regards to relationships. So you're typically in love with a memory or a residual effect of love that you experienced with that person. And for some reason, love has a way of blotting out. They say women forget what it's like to have childbirth so that they can have more children. Love has a way of blotting out all the negative that you may have experienced in a relationship with someone. And that's all that you hold on to is, oh, but we had such good times, but you're not together. Why are you not together? Because there had to be a time where the time wasn't good and you had to choose to move apart from each other. So I'd be interested in hearing the panel's thoughts on that.
Since you kind of led in with me, I'll just kind of get mine out the way. I've experienced Jekyll and Hyde, man, to be completely honest. My first marriage, on paper, I was doing what I was supposed to do, and I was getting the bare minimum. And I struggled with thoughts on, why do I feel a void? Why am I slowly beginning? Because it's stages to it. You start to get miserable, and then that starts to change into irritation. Then it starts to change into anger. And it got to a point where my now 22-year-old daughter at the time, she was like 4. We had to have a tough conversation. I told her, I don't want my daughter growing up thinking this is what love looks like. I don't want her growing up emulating this. I don't want her to grow up and be unhappy in a relationship because that's what she thinks is what she's supposed to do. And then I get to this relationship, and my wife now, be honest, man, I sound very insightful sometimes. I get that. But a lot of that is because of her, because I was extremely damaged, man. I was not in a good place in the lead up to connecting with her. And I told her that story about getting the flowers, and she was like, you let that bother you? And I was like, I don't know why I did, but it did. But don't stop doing it. So she's broken me down quite a bit, where like one of the turning points of our relationship was an argument. And she was like, why don't you just tell me what you need? And I snapped on her. I said, why? Do you really want to hear what I need? you don't want to hear what I need, because the moment I tell you what I need, you're going to lose interest, because that's not what women want to hear. They don't want to hear the man. They say they want a sensitive man until they get a sensitive man. So do you really want that? And she said, trust me, I want to know what you need. And that she earned my trust with being able to voice what I need. And slowly over time, more and more and more got revealed. Now, Billy Billy knows my wife very well. She's a great communicator, and that really helped. So I got both ends of the spectrum, and I didn't know I was as lucky as I was until I look back. I'm like, dang, okay, I'm here today because I got really lucky. I'll be honest.
I guess, but for this particular type of question, I got things twisted up early on. The intimacy and love, sex and love, like that tormented me for a long time because I equated the two. And so when there was a lack of sex or intimacy, however you want to put it, my brain translated that to, I'm not getting the kind of love I need, because that's what that was about, right? So having to almost unlearn that piece and being able to recognize that it truly is an inside job. Like it's a me thing, right? Not a external outside in type of thing, right? So my reality and my experience with love was really twisted for quite some time around this whole topic of intimacy. And in fact, real talk, it's still something I have to deal with and manage and question myself on, check myself on when I get it twisted that way. But that struggle for me was real, like is real. So that's my reality around that.
Yeah, I shared that same experience when it comes to love. Kind of navigating through life. It was just that, right? And then so for me, kind of going through the experience of what I see and how I view and how I perceive love now versus what I did, 5, 10, 15 years ago is completely different. And it took for me to stand in the mirror and really understand who I truly was as a man, my needs, understand myself, right? So just being able to look in the mirror and understand that, and learn from those experiences. What I thought in certain relationships, what I thought was love, because of the sex was good, or it wasn't enough sex, or the sex was good again, but then it wasn't enough sex. Just kind of going through that uphill battle and equating that piece to the love piece of that individual loving me, or me thinking that that is love. It took for me to really, really continue to experience life and go through it and start picking up books and not use the excuse of, hey, well, I didn't have a male role model. I didn't have a father in my home to teach me X, Y, and Z. And so for me at the time, just raising 3 young men, I had to be the individual to cut that chain, right? Or to start bridging that gap. And in order for me to do that, it was for me to, number one, pick up a book and get an understanding, in connection to me standing in the mirror and getting the understanding of who I was as an individual. And the person I thought I was at certain times in my life, I was just like, oh, that was just who I was, back in Philly. That's not really who I am. And so that experience, and I continue to experience, like, what does love look like as a man? What does love look like as a father, as a husband? Because I want to be that leader. I want to be that example to the young men in my home, so that they don't have to kind of figure it out, right? I want them to see not only how's dad, how's my father as a man, and what is his view on love. I want them to see the community of men around me, so that they can see and learn from those experiences, so that they're already wavelengths ahead. So that was kind of my experience on love, and still today, and then moving forward. And so I get the opportunity to be around men like you guys, which is why when you shared this idea, I was just like, I'm always a student of life, and love is connected to life. And if I want to continue to grow as a man, as a father, as a husband, as a leader, like, I need to be present. And so, yeah.
Yeah, for me, I would describe it as now you see me, now you don't. And that's kind of how it was in the beginning. Anyone that I felt that I had love for, I've always been willing to do the love actions, um, or loving someone. But even from my childhood of my father, it was like, boom, oh, I love him so much, but boom, bounced out. Now he's gone. Then it was, oh, I love my mom so much, but if I made a mistake, then she just came after me like crazy. So it's like, okay, this is the thing where I came out where I was talking about the unconditional or conditional love. For me, it was like always felt conditional or someone's gonna bounce. First marriage, same thing, bounced, right? And it was like a continuous thing until now, in my marriage. I mean, it even got to the point that my wife is like, I'm not going anywhere. And it took a minute to like for that to register because it was always like, okay, I got to make sure I'm doing these actions, to make sure I'm getting love, to making sure that, she ain't gonna bounce on me, this and that. She's like, dude, I'm not going anywhere. Like, chill out. Cause I remember one time we probably had like an argument. I was like, I'm thinking like, oh, she's just not happy with me, this, and that. And I said something I would never ever say again, but I said to her, I said, well, if you're not happy, then why don't you just divorce me then? And she looked at me and she was like, did you really just use the D word? Are you kidding me? And she's talking about this love thing that we have. She's like, you got to get rid of all that fear that you have. Now, once you love someone, that they're gonna bounce on you for any little thing, And it was something that by me saying that, I took it as like an out, like, well, if you're not really happy, then go, type of thing. Um, I didn't realize that it would hurt her more than me saying, or it would hurt her more by me saying that than it did for me to feel whatever I was feeling at that moment. And at that moment is when I knew I was like, okay, she's the real deal. This is real love. You can get in an argument with each other and still love one another. Like, and for me, that was different. It was like, oh, we get in an argument, even if it was on the streets, like with my bros and stuff, it was like, okay, we fighting, and it's a whole different thing now to see that, to experience that. And so, yeah, at the beginning, definitely was, this, now you see me, now you don't. And now it's just like, no, I'm here and I'm here to stay. And it's a love that I'm able to show to my children, and them even seeing what love really looks like. Like they might even experience us argue and then they also see us make up at the same time because that's something I didn't grow up with. If I did see an argument, it was a big fight and then not see someone for a very long time. And so that always meant the end to me, but yeah, you can have these arguments, you can have these deep discussions with someone and know that love is still there, or you can have correction in your life and know that that correction is coming from love. So yeah, that's kind of what my experience has been.
Rico, John, you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, I felt like I had like I talked too much, so I was listening and then I was taking notes too. Um, yeah, I mean, like I stated earlier, growing up, I think Key and myself very similar. I didn't experience love as a child, from parents and things like that. There was really nothing there. So, and I think that in my brain, I maybe, and you guys maybe probably kids navigated different ways. Unfortunately, I was wise enough to know that I wasn't getting loved, right? Whereas some kids, they go to imaginary world. I didn't do that. My life was very realistic. So I knew, that it hurt, right? And I was like, and then I kind of, in my brain, I was like, well, dang, if your parents ain't gonna love you, you really ain't, ain't nobody else really gonna care nothing about you. So it just made a different person, and by the time I was like 12 or 13, it was just a different person. It was just, different, harder person, didn't really, right. And so, I'll say that, and then love, that's parents. And I think obviously, right, they say everything, a lot of things are linked back to your childhood. Not everything, but a lot of things are linked back to your childhood. Um, so I don't think I knew what love was. And then I had my relationship with my the mother of my son, and it was very conditional for her. And so that followed up with the parents. So it was all kind of there. And then my wife, I'm married, been married now, married for going on 13 years. So I've had to learn how to love, right? And her as well, because she didn't know either, because she came from a jacked up situation too. So we've learned together, right? So there wasn't either one of us that really knew, right? So it's just growing in that aspect, and we're still growing. This is a constant, this is a daily battle, it's a daily struggle. Um, because for me, I learned to be excellent in compartmentalizing, right? I learned, I grew up, I saw a lot of death. I saw a lot of, there was neglect. There was all these different things. So you learn to just kind of pack that stuff away and you just live and you keep surviving, keep growing, growing. And so what ends up happening, you detach from emotion. And so I think that's probably the biggest struggle for me, is reaching in to learn how to display that. Um, it's funny because, not funny, but things happen, people pass or whatever. And the craziest thing comes to my brain, right? And it's like, I don't know if you guys saw Paid in Full, but they're like, people get shot every day. And that was kind of like my reality. It's like, people die every day, bro. I mean, I'm still here, you here, like, whatever. And so I'm saying all that to say this all ties into different forms of love, but it all ties into me as a person. I had to start self-developing myself, and I had to start meditating, learning knowledge of self, and learning what it is to love myself and take myself to another level and say, hey, you are enough. Like Sean was saying, that's very true. You're enough. And it doesn't matter previously what people didn't see in you. You were blessed and given everything that you needed inside yourself to be the greatest person that you could be. And you have to love yourself. And so once you do that, I started doing that and cultivating that. So then you could start to be a leader and be a leader in my household. And my wife started doing the same thing for herself. And then we came back together, right? And like, okay, now we can love each other, because I now love myself. Like, you good on you. You validated yourself. You don't need me. Like, I love you, baby. You're beautiful. But I don't have to tell you that every day, because you just know that. And I'm right. And so then you can come back together. So I'll say love experiences have been extremely in overall in life, very minimal, but it's been good in the learning process. And I love where we're at now, because we've learned to love each other based upon loving ourselves. Like Sean was saying, that's extremely deep. And I think people will skip over that. They hear that, but that's so important. We're talking about needing love and all these things, but it really comes from within, man. You really have to love yourself, and you have to develop a love for yourself and know how to love yourself. Because a lot of times we do things that are detrimental to us growing and progressing as a man and progressing as a person, thinking that that's love, but you're really just tearing yourself down, right? And so we display that and reflect those things and project those things onto other people. And so they treat us the way we're treating ourselves, and then we get mad at them, and they're like, but yeah, but you're over here doing drugs, you're doing these things, all these different things, you're doing these things to yourself. How could you require me to try to, right? And so I'll just say that me loving myself, progressing to that place, and then I've been blessed that me and my wife are at a place now where it's so much love between the two of us. Um, and so it's grown. It's great now. The love experience is now at the place where it needs to be, and it's getting better day by day. But it's a process. I would definitely say that it's been rough, but it's a process, and you got to love the process, trust the process, love yourself, and then continue to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. That cultivation piece for me is that process. Like, people just want to go outside and say, it'd be nice to have fresh tomatoes. And they just want to go outside and there be tomatoes. Well, I don't know. Did you plant any tomato seeds? Did you water any tomato plants? Did you get rid of the pests that would be killing the tomato? Like, did you do any of the work? Because if you didn't do any of the work, I don't care where you go outside in your backyard, you ain't gonna magically find tomatoes. It's not Jack and the Beanstalk. So that cultivation component, I think, going back to that generational component, I think that's where, when we were seeing partnership, Oh, well, they just make it work. They just make it work. They just make it work. They've been together for 50 years. I know people who've been together for 50 years, and I'm like, they shouldn't be together. They should not be together, but they're together. And so what do their children do? They emulate that. Well, I'm going to just say it. I'm in this shitty relationship, but I'm going to be in this shitty relationship till the end of my life. And they just stick and they stay. And it's not, and not, it's not so much that they stick and they stay. They stick and they stay and they don't cultivate. They're not even trying to grow the component of love that they truly are seeking in that relationship, which is the reason you're sticking and you're staying. And most people end up sticking and staying because they just don't know any better. And I'm recently remarried, and we just celebrated 4 days ago our 1 year anniversary. And let me tell you, that first year, I've known my wife for 5 years. That first year of marriage was hella hard. Hella hard. And I love her. I love her, and I know she loves me. But going to what you said, Keith, there's things that she has said along the way, like reassuring me that she's here. Babe, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Being open and vulnerable to love is a very scary and dangerous place for men. Why? Because we don't interact with it very often. Like, think about from the time you were a boy, when you can, as far back as you can remember, to today, and think about how many examples of love that you've experienced, and then say how many of those examples ended in tragedy. It's a scary place, because if I think it's going to leave me the moment I commit, and I've had this conversation with my wife, look, I kind of feel like I'm always a 1 foot on and 1 foot just in case. And so to say, okay, I'm going to bring this just in case foot up to be up here with you, boy, you better not drop me. You better not. I'll burn this thing down. You better not drop me. But it's like, it's a very scary place. And it's almost like you're ticking up on a roller coaster and you don't know where the top is at. And all you're doing is hoping that you're going to go up. And when you do drop, you hope you don't drop down further than when you started. And so it's like you're going to have those arguments, and it's going to go whoop, and you'll be right back trying to build up higher and higher. But when your expectation of love is an unrealistic expectation. So I really like, John, that you said, I got my example of fatherhood from sitcoms. Somebody wrote that. That's like ideal situation, because somebody can write it. They can say, I don't like the way that sounds. Let me erase that and rewrite it this way. But when you're living like the heartbeats that you have in your life, nobody's writing that. That's completely unscripted. That is a scary place to be in, when you're going to say, I'm going to be open. I'm going to be honest to the fact as a man, and to the fact as a human, that I need you to love me, that I want you to love me. I have found a way to love myself, but I desire love from you. That is a scary place to be. So I really appreciate you bringing that cultivation aspect up, Rico, because it's really important. And Tim, I seen your message that you had there, as far as the real toxic masculinity is suffering in silence. Yet that is what we have, in many ways, all, even us on this call, have subscribed to and have allowed to be the status quo. Unchecked, unaccountable, just it is what it is, and that's just what being a man is. Nah, hell with that. I'm done with that's what being a man is. Look, you gonna love me. That's if you're watching when I told you not to watch Mrs. Rowe, you gonna love me. So John, was there anything else you wanted to add before I move us to the last topic?
Yeah. Hey, Billy, I definitely love that you're going to love me. And also, going back to what Tim said, Tim, I think you mentioned about, like, when you're putting yourself in those particular circumstances that was basically caused by you or maybe your partner. But I want to add on to that. Basically, you really got to set your boundaries. Like, where are your boundaries at, and like where are your partner's boundaries at? Because if you don't, it's like doing a tango dance. If you don't take the lead, and your partner started taking the lead, and you're moving along at one point it was cool. Then, you know, like as you both grow into your different phases, it's going to be not cool anymore. So, and you know, like people grow at different rates. Like me and my wife, we're about the same age, but we grow whatever it is. It's at different times. Sometimes she's faster than me. Sometimes I'm faster. Sometimes we're never really on the same place. But it's always, you really gotta voice your boundaries. Like, hey, you know, this is where I'm at, and you know, I need you here, and it's it's a constant fight. I like that daily. Someone mentioned that it's a daily battle. It's constant. You really gotta fight all the time for your love, and for the love that you're giving to your wife, to your kids, to your family members. So it's hard. Nothing easy.
You got to work for it. So with that, I want to move us along to the last topic. We got about 24 minutes left, but the last question that I have is really an accountability question. It has to do with how can we begin to improve the experience. I think that this is part of it, is just creating a space to where it's like, yo, like, you about that love life? Yeah, I'm about that love life. All right, let's create that space and start lifting each other up and supporting each other in the fact that this is something that we genuinely want. This is something that we want to receive. This is something that we, from the male perspective of, or my masculinity perspective, this is something that we want to get right. Execution, and especially there's a couple people military here, execution is critical when you're on mission. It's critical. And so you don't have the opportunity to be like, oops, my bad, we were supposed to go on Zulu and we went on Foxtrot. Like, no. I don't have you. I could lose my life if I don't get this right. And I feel like we need to enter that space where, like, yo, this love thing, it's critical that we get this right. Because not only could I lose my life, not only could I take my life, I can impact the lives of others because of my inability or unwillingness to really do everything that I need to do to get it right. I love, Rico, that you said, yo, I had to read some books. I had to become a student about a subject that I didn't know. And that is an excellent space to start. As Bruce will tell you, he's in the live chat, but I did a show on financial literacy, financial matters. And one of the things I had as the falsehood there was, hey, yo, you know, if you're like an adult now, you can't keep blaming your parents that you don't know how to set a budget. That ship has sailed because you're not a child anymore. But the same can be said for love. The same can be said for anything that we want to learn. But the critical nature of love, as it being, going back to that nutrient that we need, it sustains us. That critical nature of love, there's no way you can tell me that, well, my parents didn't give me love, so I didn't have a good example. Dude, we live in an information age. You can find probably more things about toxic love on the internet than you can find about real love on the internet, but you can still research all of it and decide what works for you. So how can we begin to improve the experience, our experience as men with love?
I think it starts with self-accountability, kind of like what we were already addressing already. But then it's also nipping it in the bud when we're talking to our brothers, like what we're doing right now. There's a lot of times we sit, you know, I can talk with some friends that they don't want to talk about love. They want to talk about some other stuff, you know what I mean? Or if you bring it up, they're like, bro, what you talking about, right? That same, you know, societal, you know, norms of what it is to be a man. You know, I'm a man. I'm not, you know, chest out, you know, it's all about respect. But once you hear that, you got to let them know, nah, man, like for real, what does love look like to you? You know, and if we have these conversations and normalize it some more, I think that would be very helpful. I think that will help all of us, and not just that, but even doing that with our wives, just being real, or whoever it is you're dating, being real and saying, look, this is what love looks like to me. And I think once people start accepting that and seeing more people talk about it, I think it will spread.
I absolutely agree with
I
that.
think it's time. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just in agreement. That's it. Go ahead, Rico.
Oh, yeah, I think I agree with that. Self accountability, right? Starting expectations, holding people accountable. And then I also think it's time for us, like you said, Billy, it's time for us to start releasing stuff. You know, like, your parents didn't give you, your dad didn't, your mom didn't. It I'm not saying so what, but I'm just like, you're grown now and it's time to start releasing these things, because what we harbor and what we hang on to a lot of times, that just builds a wall, right? That starts to create um, something that's impenetrable. And you may have a wife or your girlfriend or your children or whoever, whatever, they're trying to get through that wall. But the longer you hang on to these things, you're putting yourself behind a thicker wall, right? And you just continue to build it. And so my thing would be to start releasing things, knocking down that wall, start releasing, get some counseling, right? How do you improve the experience? Go and actually talk about your childhood experiences that you had. If they got you locked down, if the past has you in shackles, right? Then it's time to talk to someone to help to release those chains and to get that stuff broken. Change your mentality. It's time to start developing those positive characteristics that are going to lead you to being more successful and being able to show love and being able to be accepting of love, because it's not just us showing it, but it's you being able to accept it. The universe has duality, right? And so there is the giving, but then there's also the reception of that love. So I think that's for me, that's a big thing. Releasing the past experiences that you've had, and then seek help. If you need help, go get help. It's okay to not be okay. You need to know you're not okay. Have that discussion, and so that you can start to build upon that and develop and develop those skill sets so you can love better, love yourself better, and love others better.
I want to share three things. I kept reading the question, how can we begin to improve the experience? And so the first one, I think that when it comes to improving at any area or in any aspect of your life, I think number one, it requires self-reflection. And I think that's something that as a society, as a man, we don't do enough as far as be still enough to be with ourselves to really get an understanding of who we truly are. So that's number one, the self-reflection. I think the second thing is being honest with ourselves. And I think that there's one thing when it comes to even the self-reflecting, a lot of times we'll make these excuses for ourselves on why we make certain decisions. And part of that is because we're not 100% honest with ourselves and the why behind the decisions that we make. And so I think that us being vulnerable with ourselves is super, super important for us while we're doing the self-reflection. So that's number two. And then the third thing that I really feel, someone mentioned it earlier, the word accountability. I realized in the last probably 5 or 6 years of my life how important an accountability partner is, or accountability partners. And so number three will be find your community, right? And so in this experience, in growing and improving, accountability and growth is key. And so if you don't have a circle of people, if you don't have a person, you need to find that person that you can be open and honest with, and you can tell them, hey, as a man, I struggle with these things. I'm looking to improve. And so I need to be able to call on Sean. I need to be able to call on Key. I need to be able, because I trust them enough and to be vulnerable enough with them, because I know that as a human, I may fall down and have a bad day, but I could depend on that person to my right and to my left to hold me accountable and keep me centered. And so those are the three things that I would say as a community of men in our world. Those are three things that I would leave people with, as well as reminding myself of, in order for me as a father, as a husband, as a leader in my community, in order for me to continue to improve. Those are three things that are much needed.
Yeah, that honesty part is crucial, because honesty doesn't come with excuses. And whenever you talk about accountability, um, and you're going to be honest about it, you stop making excuses. You did what you did because you did it, not because I didn't learn about love. And I remember I was writing about my first marriage, and I remember I was writing, and it was like, I didn't know what it was to be a husband. I didn't know how to be a husband. I didn't have a significant example on what that husbandship should look like. And then I said, I also didn't go and get educated on how to be a husband. And that's on me. That's on me. Because granted, I didn't know how to be a husband, but I knew I didn't know how to be a husband. So what was I willing to do about it? I was willing to not know how to be a husband. And no wonder that relationship came to an end. Because if you're married to somebody and you don't know how to be a husband, and you're not actively pursuing gaining that wisdom and that knowledge, then why the hell would they stay around? For you to continue to not be a husband to them and to continue to lean on that excuse. And it took a while. I mean, it took a while in life to come to that realization that, damn, that was on me. Now, I could have gotten educated on being a husband and did things the right way, and still maybe the relationship didn't work, but I have to accept my part of that equation. I didn't do the work that I needed to do to become a husband. Didn't matter that I wasn't a husband. I was a husband then, so it was for me to learn at that point. I love the accountability and the honesty.
I kind of piggyback off. I think it was Rico that said the why, man. The power of why is I can't even quantify it. I do this thing once a week where I do reflection. I reflect on myself professionally. Am I where I want to be? What could I get to go? What do I need to do? Be real with myself. What am I lacking? Why am I lacking it? And being real honest with myself. I also do that as a husband, as a father. Am I nurturing those relationships the right way? Because one of the reason why we have such a high divorce rate in our society is because people think that they've arrived when they say I do. And they think I don't have to work no more. I got them. Like that old Dave Chappelle thing. Gotcha. But that's not how it works. It's like, what is it, a Gigapet or a Sims character. If you don't take care of those every once in a while and fill those needs, it starts to wither. So I reflect and I always ask myself the why. And then when I'm angry or I'm irritated, that why is very powerful, because I ask myself, why am I feeling that way? Is it really because of this thing, or is it something else bothering me? And if that's the case, why am I addressing that? So that has been really helpful for me. And I would say we need to start being our own advocate, man. Nobody's going to advocate for us men. We got to do that. And what that looks like is not being afraid to tell your significant other what you need. Not to whine about what you need, but to say what you need. Because we don't realize it, but it comes out anyway. And the way it comes out is we bottle it in. We feel we feel unnurtured, we feel uncareful, we feel unloved, and then we explode. And then that's an anger. Oh, you're angry, and it's like it was a buildup, and you got to get better and say, hey, look, this is bothering me right now, and this is why. Being able to express that and be more articulate, we got to get better at that as men. The suffering in silence has to end. Like you said, Billy, that you had moments where you had suicidal thoughts. I had suicidal thoughts too, and I never shared those with anybody. I dealt with it. And how unhealthy that was, I found out later. And we just got to get better at that. We need to not suffer in silence anymore.
Absolutely.
I think my one reflection would be around like creating a vision. Like it's interesting when we talk about a lot of these type of things. If one doesn't have a vision of what they want, how do you want to feel? Like what does being loved look like? Like any of those type of things. It's very difficult to go after something that you can't even envision. You know what I mean? You can't see what it is. What would be the elements for me to feel totally loved? Like, what do I need? Right. And then to that point about the why, then I could get to like, well, why do I want what I say I want? Right. And then being able to like critically and honestly be able to assess, is that really what you want? Like, is that like, is that the translation of love for you? And does that feel right when you sort of go down that rabbit hole, so that you could then cast a vision of something that is real to you. You feel it in your bones. And then it's about, okay, so now what am I willing to do? Right? What am I willing to do? What am I willing to take accountability for? How do I go seeking that? Because now I have clarity. I at least have an idea of what it is that I want, how I want to feel. And what's the gap between where I'm at right now and what that vision. Right? So that vision in pieces is the thing for me.
You're on mute, Billy.
Sorry. In analytics, we talk about throwing darts to forecast. Oh, well, we don't know what the forecast is going to be. And you just got to throw a dart and hope you hit on the forecast. And it's like, yeah, how long do you think that game going to work? Like that, if ever. Like, that's not a viable plan to achieve a forecast and to build a strategy. And so when you talk about creating that vision, even as men, I believe all of us are married, as men for our family, like it is not all of our responsibility, but as leaders, it is our responsibility to impart, hey, this is the vision. Like my wife and I, we sit and we have a financial strategy meeting every year. And we decide, what are we going to save? What's going to go to travel? What's going to go to investments? We have this conversation every year. And now in my ignorance, why are we not having a conversation of what does love look like this year? What does love, what does love look like for us this year? I can tell you how much money we're going to save by the end of the year. I know that because we've documented it. But we haven't documented what does love look like this year. So we about to do that exercise this weekend. I'm about to write that down.
That's excellent, man. Like that, kind of like a pulse check, right? Like, what do you need from me? Is it the same as it always been, or have you evolved? What do you need now? And then Sean, man, that vision thing is important. As I put in the chat, we're quick to be like, hey, I want to be loved. And then they'll be like, how do you want to, how do I show you love? And you're like, I don't know. So we got to get better at figuring out, how do we feel loved, and communicating that to, and put a little bit more trust in our significant others to, and I think we all struggle with that. Like Billy said, you're removing me from my safe space now, because now I got to put both hands in the game, and you're going to leave me defenseless. I put both my hands are down now. I can't protect myself. I think we have to take that leap and have a little bit more trust in our counterparts to be willing to do that work. And I think we'll be pleasantly surprised. I know I have been.
Yeah. Hey, Billy, I also want to add on that. I know based on a life experience, we all know that humans, we all make mistakes. So a very skillful or tool to utilize is learning how to forgive. You got to learn how to forgive yourself, forgive others. Because if you can't, because once you're able to do that, there's a certain kind of power that comes along with that too. Not necessarily that you have to agree with the person who did you wrong, or if you did yourself wrong. It's you're able to set yourself free. You're able to let yourself move on. So that's something that really difficult to do, but once you're able to get there, it's you're able to accomplish what, like the vision that you have, because sometimes it don't go all the way like how the plan is. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
You're mute again, Billy.
My bad. I'm gonna start using the click button. You'd think that I don't know what a show is. We have about 5 minutes left before close. I do want to bring in before we give final comments. Some of the things that Bruce must be at his house shouting right now because he's in the chat popping. But he says, loving ourselves completely teaches others how to love us. He also says that I never experienced love as a child, so loving my wife completely is scary. It's the most vulnerable space I've ever been in my life. Man, I'm telling you, you go back to trying to hide your eyes in the dark. You scared of the dark again. Being honest and being open about our needs should be the foundation for improvement, in my opinion. And then he said, I think this was when you were speaking, Glenn. He said those three things are foundational. I love it. But with that, let's go with closing thoughts. I'll let you guys hash it out on whoever goes first. I'm okay. Closing thoughts on this topic of love on this first episode of the Men's Circle, and I feel like many more to come because we have so much to talk about.
I'll kind of go first. I got more out of this than I expected to get a lot out of this, and I got more out of this than I thought. Just hearing the perspectives of people. Out of everybody that's on here, the person I probably know the best besides Billy is probably Key. And I would tell you, Key, that just observationally, always look at your relationship with you and your wife and see how you interact. And I think, man, they're making it to the finish line, man. They're a good team, man. And it's really cool to watch you continue to grow and develop, and that whole relationship. But I think this has been really cool to hear everybody's perspective on this and hear that although some of the themes are common, there's been some things that maybe you haven't thought about, or I haven't thought about, that makes me think even more. Like John, you said, learn how to forgive. You make me think about not only forgiving other people, but forgiving yourself. And so, I'm going to be thinking about this conversation long after it's over, and I thank all of you for that.
Yeah. Just closing thoughts from me. I was actually pretty nervous about this talk, Billy, once when you contacted me, because I'm like, I was like, hey, you know what, let's do it. You right on, Billy, that intro you gave me, that where I am pretty quiet, but I do have a lot of thoughts in my head. But I'm glad we had this talk, because I recently just joined social media a couple months ago. I was never a fan of it. I'm still not certain if I'm a fan of it, but I see a lot of I would say toxic behavior, not genuine, and for me, I'm all about real love, real truth, being honest, especially in positive, being uplifting. So I'm with you, Billy. I'm ready to spread the love. What I know, I'm willing to learn from others too. So.
Hey, super appreciative of you, Billy, man, for creating a space and not thinking so long on it for years and years and years to finally create a space for people to come together, share their life's experiences, take some things away. The same thing, that exercise that you were just kind of talking about. When you mentioned about, the vision of, we don't talk about what does love look like for us in our relationship, for our kids, for 2023 or 2025 or whatever. And so that is something that this weekend as a family, we will be casting our vision for the rest of the year. And so for this space, I'm super appreciative of the voices on this table. And Billy, I just want to say thank you, man, publicly.
Yeah, same here, Ro. I mean, Billy, appreciate you bringing on the platform. Tim, thank you so much for what you said, man. It's work. It's work, but honestly, with the wife, I think she's really become my best friend in all of this. So this has been something that, it's been a great experience of actually having true love, where it's something that I didn't really experience before. But with that being said, like us coming together and being able to do this, it's major. Like getting key points from everyone, from Rico to, to Sean. I mean, everyone here together. This, I think, is something that we can take together and feed to even our circles outside of this group here. Um, Learned a lot of nuggets today. And I thought I was going to be talking probably the most, and that wasn't the case. So I was, and gladly not talking the most, because I learned a lot. And I mean, especially when Rico started hitting on the self-love, that thing is deep. Self-love, I think that's probably what I'll probably be going over a lot with myself, and reevaluating and making sure that, I find myself being enough. That way everyone else can think that I'm enough. So that's kind of my closing thoughts there. And thank you all for getting on, man. Appreciate all of you.
Yeah, man. I kind of echo the same. Like, I'm super grateful for this environment that we had, for like these men that are here willing to be open and share. I think my last sort of closing thoughts is, I don't look at this as any type of destination to try and get to, because if I'm being real honest, I don't expect to ever have this figured out. But what I can commit to doing is having some grace with myself, recognizing the human elements of how I'm wired, and the fact that I'm not going to be in a loving place every single day, all day, right? But can I stay in that space for longer over time? And that for me is winning. So I'm trying to pace myself on this. I'm trying to be real open and honest with myself about it, and give myself grace when I don't have what I need in order to do it. And can I reach out to a brother for help? Right? Can I strengthen my relationship with God if that's where I get my self-love nourishment from, or that reflection? So that's where I'm at.
Now I have confused myself on whether to push my button on my microphone or click my unmute button. Man, I am so appreciative of all of you brothers for coming on this evening, on the men's circle. I feel like this was the space to start. This was the place to begin. Again, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I know that it's something that is needed, because I do a lot of reflection. Actually, I reflect every single morning when I wake up. But even in that reflection, there's things just in talking to the six of you I have never thought about in my own individual isolated reflection and meditation. Um, and sometimes it's funny when you're talking to people and you hear yourself. That's why I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do that exercise for love. We've done this exercise for like 3 years now, financially, but we've never done this exercise for love. And going back to that myth of what's more important, respect or love, money or love, it's love. So why would you prioritize your planning around simply finances? Finances are important. Don't get me wrong. I ain't never going to tell somebody, hey, finances ain't important. They're important, but they're definitely not more important than love. Because if I was a millionaire, if I could be a billionaire tomorrow, but that meant nobody on the planet loved me, no, I'm good. I don't want that. I don't want that. Really quickly, I know we're a little over time, but I want to put some of the takeaways from today's conversation. Number one that I got was be accountable to love yourself. And really, you could just say be accountable and leave it at that, because there's so many things that you can be accountable to when it comes to love. Takeaway number two is be your own advocate. Tim, you said that. Be your own advocate. We got to become better at using, I don't like telling people what they have to do. I recommend we become better at becoming more vocal about what it is that we need and not being so secretive about what we need. And if we don't know what we need, being willing to say, hey, I don't know what I need from you, but can we work together to try to figure that out? God dang, collaboration. Takeaway number 3 is abandonment makes love a dangerous space. A lot of the men tonight said, yo, I had people dip out on me that were supposed to love me. And so now kind of relying on somebody to love me is a scary space because I've already been abandoned before. I've already been let down. I've already been discouraged from my experiences with previous love. But the reality is that operating in a space where it's uncomfortable is going to yield the most growth in who we want to become as individuals and in what we want to achieve in life. Takeaway number 4 I have is love requires cultivation. Rico, that came from you. Look, ain't nobody gonna come and give you a magic wand and make love this effortless endeavor. It's not gonna happen that way. It's gonna require cultivation. It's gonna require cultivation of self and cultivation of the relationships that you're fostering that love with. And then takeaway number 5, John, that came from you, and I love the human aspect that we're all fallible. We're all human. Forgive that and continue to move forward in love. Realize that if you have some unrealistic expectation that love is going to be flawless, you're going to be let down every time. And that goes indirectly to Glenn, what you said about being honest. When you're let down, you got to ask, is love the problem? Was I the problem? Was education the problem? But be honest about what the problem was, because if you're honest about the problem, you can fix the problem. But if you're dishonest and you decide to, oh, I'm going to make this excuse, well, it's her, because that's what we do sometimes. It's her. Well, you can't fix a problem that's not really the problem. And even if you fix her, you still gonna have that same problem, and the problem is still going to exist later on down the road. And then lastly is that exercise, the annual love planning, coined by Billy Rowe. I'm trademark patent pending. The annual love planning exercise, that for any relationship, not even if you're married, for any relationship. I love, Glenn, that you said, what does that love look like in my family? Like, what does that love look like this year for my relationship with my mother, for my relationship with my father, my relationship with my sister? Like, what does that love look like for my relationship with strangers? What does that look like? This is why I'm scared always to delve into thoughts, because it takes me everywhere. But that would be something that I challenge all men that are watching tonight to really sit down and engage. And Sean, I think you would maybe agree with this. The starting point would be what does that love look like for myself this year? What does loving me look like for myself this year? And then allow that to spiral out to all the other spaces that you need to provide love. So that's what I got for you guys tonight, man. It's been a wonderful conversation. Salute to all you brothers that tuned in live. Salute to you brothers on the panel. Salute to those who were engaged in the chat. I'll figure out when the next one of these will be. It will not be too long before the next one, because I feel like this is something that's needed. But other than that, that's all I have for you guys this evening. Thank you for tuning in live. And until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.